Hey everyone, welcome to today's webinar, which is called Finding Whitespace in Your Brand and Channel Strategy. And thanks for joining us. We so promise it's going to be worth your time. If you care about how your team is spending your marketing and trade budget, you're in the right place. My name is Chris Ambarian. I'm one of the founders, along with Yuval, of PromoMash. And since our company mission is to help brands to promote better and more competitively, I'm pleased to have the honor of introducing our presenter today, who is none other than Steve Gaither, the Executive Vice President of Growth and Strategy at 108 Agency. And he's a true CPG veteran, a mentor, all-around good guy who, like us, loves to help emerging brands win. He has founded his own CPG-focused agency. He's worked with lots of brands of all sizes, some of which he's invested in to help them accelerate their growth, possibly even within the last 24 hours. So suffice to say, you're going to be in great hands. Now, before we get started, I just want to direct your attention to the sidebar on your screen. Hopefully, you've already typed in your name. Started engaging in the chat. We love an engaged audience. So as you come in, introduce yourself, tell us where you're from. Steve says that he doesn't mind being interrupted if there are questions. So as you have them, ask away. Don't be shy. Take advantage of this awesome opportunity to speak with basically a guy who's just of service to you and really wants to see you shine and be more successful. So we'll be moderating the chat. Make sure you get your questions highlighted and answered. And without further ado, Steve, it's all you. Take it away.
Everybody, just to give a quick background, I ran my own CPG agency for 20 years called JB Chicago, heavily focused on CPG, food and bev, worked with the Smithfields of the world, the Good Bellies of the world. I was a GPLP in a VC fund called Spiral Sun Ventures. My agency got acquired by CA Fortune on the brokerage side in 2019. So I ran the branding unit for them and became CMO of the larger organization. And then I jumped ship in January 2022 and joined a performance marketing shop where I could put brand strategy and package design on top of performance marketing. Work with my sales friends, work with my ops friends, including PromoMash, and have connectivity to a debt and equity in the middle. So what I thought I'd share is along the way, I've really got this thesis, which is 2 wrongs don't make a right, but 3 lefts do. I've made enough lefts that maybe I could save you guys some calorie burn along the way. So I thought I'd just share sort of continuum of thinking from brand strategy to tactical, and then sort of with the group here, let the spirit move us on how we want to approach that. So I'll just walk you through a little bit of a story here. Even though I'm pitching it from an agency or presenting from an agency perspective, these are the best practices that every company should take internally. So don't feel like you have to call 108 to get this stuff done. All these things are action items that either you or your existing partners can work from. So once again, this is not a pitch, right? So, but once again, just how I like to think about things is, and the reason why I was at 108 is I really believe this idea of creative meets commerce, right? Pretty pictures are nice, packaging is nice, but unless it actually drives sales velocity or online average order value or LTV, it doesn't really matter, right? So the two need to come together, especially when it comes to CPG, because it's such a different universe. Just to give a sense of the type of folks that I've worked with and some of the stories I might be sharing, there's really sort of 4 chunks of folks, right? It's either emerging brands that are capitalized. If they're not capitalized, just so you guys know, always consider me an advisor, not on the cap table. My brain is always free. But capitalized emerging brands, middle market manufacturers that might do private label and co-packing or might have a brand with 60 SKUs, but they sort of had their heyday. Any size international company coming in the U.S. that realizes that the U.S. is much different than any other market, Or for the big guys like the Smithfields of the world, I'm more like Navy SEAL Team 6, right? Fly in, look at plant-based protein and natural channel, set their team up for success and parachute out. But no matter the size of the company, uh, one thing is common, right? So before I get into any size of the company, the first thing I like to think about is what I call brand strategy, right? And it doesn't matter if you got a brand that's doing 500K, a brand that's doing 20 million, or even a brand that's doing 100 million. I still recommend everybody go through this process, right? So I'm going to sort of break it down for you guys and how I do it. And once again, some of these best practices you could do yourself or should do yourself. So the first thing I like to do is call timeout, right? And dig through what I call as the 4 C's. That's the company, the category, the competition, and most important, the customer, right? So company-wise, oftentimes I'll go in and look at, hey, what's the capabilities? What's the capacity? What channels have I succeeded or failed in? What SKUs am I running? What SKUs are successful? What markets are successful? What's hanging out in the closet from the innovation side that might be coming down the road? And really get a sense of all the assets that I have within my organization, right? So once again, doing a deep dive and documenting all those differentiators and value add components. Category and competition, I'm going to state this right off the bat. I don't believe in qualitative research, right, for the spend. I've done a lot of focus groups with the Ajinomoto and Ling Ling and brands like that. And with focus groups and surveys, there's a couple things I found. One is that people lie, right? They don't mean to. They're just not professional feedback givers, and you're asking a non-professional feedback giver to give an opinion whether they want to or not. Also, what I found with focus group is the loudest person usually wins, right? Not the smartest person, the loudest person. And the last thing is somebody might actually believe they will drink and buy this kale juice for $14, but unfortunately that's not the case. So what I'm the biggest fan of when it comes to category and competition is syndicated data, right? Getting your hands on IRI, Nielsen, or spins to be able to look at it from a couple different ways. Yes, I want to look at it like a normal analyst does. I want to look at ACV. I want to look at TDP or total distribution points. I want to look at velocity. I want to look at suggested retail price or SRP, all those things. But I like to think about the data a little bit differently, right? I like to think about how can I steal from two categories instead of creating a new one. Good example of that is Olipop, right? Olipop went, you have sparkling water on the left and you have kombucha on the right. What they did is they didn't create a new category like Perfect Bar did, which is very, very difficult to do. What they did is they slid right in the middle of two, got the sparkling water people to trade up for function, and got the functional kombucha people and the apple cider vinegar people to trade over for better taste, lower price, and more usage occasion, right? Also, I like to think about how can I lower by looking at the price of my competitive set. How can I lower the SRP, not just by lowering the SRP, how can I do it by reducing the outsize or changing the pack size? Maybe I shouldn't be in this category, but maybe I should instead be in this adjacency, right? If you think about, I had a client one time that was South America, and they were launching an avocado protein powder, an avocado bar. They were launching a avocado milk. And I'm like, hey, you've got all these things in sports nutrition set. If you're doing the avocado milk, you're going to be way over in the refrigerated glass with milk. That's a dog eat dog world over there. The other place is over by the coffee set in 1 liter Tetra Pak. That's a rough spot. Or if you actually 4-packed it in Tetra Pak, put some protein in it, you could be in that same set. So now you have a brand block in sports nutrition where you've got the 4-pack of protein drinks, you have the protein powder and the protein bars all in one place as your beachhead. After you win that beachhead, then you can move to other categories or aisles in the store, right? So I really like to dig through the category and competition through that syndicated data. Then the last C is the customer. Not only the consumer to pull the product off the shelf, I need to tell the retailer why to put it on the shelf. And that syndicated data helps, right? If you can really tell the buyer how you can outturn, outmargin, or bring new people to your shelves, that's how you're going to get on shelves. So that way a consumer can pull you off the shelf. So what I tend to do then is take those 4 C's down, and the core goal is to create what I call the brand idea, which has a couple different components, right? It's really distilling that data down between the company, the category, the competition, the customer, breaking in key insights, using that to find the white space of how to answer that brand idea, or the checkoffs that the brand I need to do. And out of that comes everything from the brand name to the product names, to the positioning statement, to the key messaging, to the SKU rationalization or the prioritization. But more importantly, the story that takes you from where you are today to where both your consumer and your buyer actually live, right? So if you get those 4 C's right, now you're doing something that's going to win with the consumer and the buyer. So after you thumbs that up and you figure out who you are and what your real differentiator is, really based on your capabilities, finding the white space in the data and aligning that with the emotional need of your consumer, that's when you're going to have something, right? And that might change some stuff you're doing with the co-man. That might say, hey, instead of a 12 ounce at $12.99, let's do a 7 ounce at $7.99, because I'm going to increase my velocity by 7-fold doing that, right? So these are the things that really count and make sense. Then when you move to that creative platform and you think about package design, I'm really looking for the look, the feel, the voice of the brand. But that package design needs to do 2 things, right? One, it needs to disrupt the shelf, right? And number 2, it needs to tell a consumer in 1.5 seconds why they give a heck. I mean, consumers are flying by a shelf at 150 miles an hour, 2 minutes per aisle max. They're late to take Jimmy and Susie to soccer practice. They don't have time for stories or education. It's the most selfish they're ever going to be is at the grocery store. A good example of that is when I started working with Goodbelly, when Alan Murray jumped over from Tetra Pak over there. He had a bright, beautiful, colorful packaging, man. It should have won design awards. It was gorgeous. The problem was when you set it on the table, it was great. But when you actually put that product on the shelf with the other bright, beautiful, colorful fruit juices, it blended in like a chameleon. Once we actually went with the black packaging that disrupted the shelf and hovered off the fluorescent lights in the refrigerated set, and then 2, the 1.5 second punch in the face. Remember when Goodbelly came out, it was one of the first probiotics. No one really had any knowledge of what probiotics are or were compared to today, right? So once again, that probiotic story of trying to tell people zillions of billions of bugs in your body, that's a hell of a lot of education for a store shelf. So what we ended up doing was, 1, we had a great name working for us, Goodbelly. I drink it, it makes my belly feel good. 2, on the front of the pack, we simply told the gut health story. Hey, this is good for my gut and good for my belly and a great tasting juice. On the back of the pack, we started going into that compelling billions of bugs in your body doing things. Those 2 things increase velocity overnight by 300%, right? So that's really what you need to do from a packaging perspective. The other part of the creative platform is, once again, that buyer story that I told you. You need to figure out how to make the emotional connection with the buyer to make their job easier. From that data, be able to tell them, if you put this on the shelf, I will outturn, or I will outmargin, and or I will bring new people to the set. And if you do that, you win. The last part of the creative platform you need to think about is, now that you created this voice of the brand, for the grocery store is really one target consumer, the 25 to 55-year-old conscientious consumer female that gives a crap about what she puts in her body, how animals are and her family are how animals and people are treated, and her carbon footprint. She is the reason why Whole Foods looks like Walmart now and Walmart looks like Whole Foods. She is responsible for the big schmush. When I go online, though, I have that language for her. Once I go online, I can create different dialects of that language for yoga mom versus grilling dad versus Gen Z. and all these different pseudo personalities and personas that I can go after. Now I can create those dialects for digital, right? And then the last part is the tactical marketing plan aligned with budget and channel strategy, right? What do I do in what order, why, when, and how, and how do we think about that? So first, I like to think about block and tackle. Yeah, get the production art, get the designs done, get the production art, have that velocity move for you, right? Next, you need to arm the sales team with the stuff they need to do that job to make that emotional connection with the buyer on an out-turning, out-margining, or bringing new people to their shelves through the retailer deck and sell sheet. The third component, assuming probably 90% of CPG products, let's really look at that website with Shopify. Let's look at the correct tech stack against it, and let's build in SEO fundamentals from that. This is the middle of the funnel. This is your haymaker. Build that infrastructure solid. And depending on the size of the company, there's some great tools out there, like with Micmac and Destiny shoppable landing pages, to where I can, if I'm in over 2,500 stores, I can kick one of these in, and it's more than just a store locator. What I could do is actually, if I'm running an ad in Florida, I could drive that consumer to DTC or Amazon. But if I'm in stock at a Publix a mile away and a Whole Foods a mile and a half away, now I can drive the consumer to retailer.com or Publix.com or WholeFoods.com, add it to cart, and actually measure, at least to add to cart. And with 7 retailers, you can measure full conversion funnels. So knowing that you can grow your Amazon or direct to consumer to 10, 20, maybe 30 million, at some point you will hit a wall of diminishing return. The hockey stick to 100 million always involves retail, right? So you have to be able to focus and prioritize and give people the opportunity to shoot anywhere, but knowing that the long tail is really focused on retail. So I'm going to get into some geeky stuff a little bit now, but here's how I think sort of about channels. So after you have a good approach, a good brand strategy, a good sort of tactical marketing plan, how do you execute amongst different channels? So here's how I really look at performance or direct to consumer, or really the landscape, right? So you've got Shopify. That's your direct to consumer. If you build it, they will not come. So you have to drive traffic there. That's your paid social display SEO. Not all of it's treated equally. I'll talk to you more about that in a minute. Amazon, I treat one of two ways, right? Amazon is either I treat it absolutely separate, like a silo. I treat it just like a retailer and say, hey, I'm not trying to drive traffic to Amazon. I'm trying to get the Amazon shopper to see my product. But instead of trade spend, like you see at a grocery store, my trade spend there is Amazon SEO and Amazon paid search, right? So I'm still trying to collect the people, quote unquote, shopping at the Amazon store and trying to do my Amazon shelf talkers, if you will, or promos to drive that consumer in that vehicle. The one time that differs is if you look at, let's say like Pitos, right? Extruded puff snack, right? I'm selling big bags of puffed air that aren't that expensive. 3PL on Shopify and direct to consumer just doesn't add up. The cool part about Amazon, well, they get you in other ways, but their FBA pricing is relatively low, right? So they can actually ship in a lot of cases cheaper than 3PL. So in that case, what we do with our Shopify side is we actually add the buy on Prime button to where I'm owning the consumer relationship. I'm driving Klaviyo and own that email and SMS to the client, but the purchase is happening directly to Amazon and adding to cart in there, which, by the way, I happen to get up to 10K a month by being my own affiliate to drive somebody to Amazon. It sort of works to where if you have a product, having Shopify and Klaviyo makes sense, even if you aren't doing fulfillment through 3PL, through Shopify. Amazon can be your best friend. Over on the left-hand side, that's where your sales agencies come in, or your sales accelerator. That's the Walmarts, the Krogers, the HEBs, the Whole Foods. Each one of these guys now has a retailer, insert retailer name here.com, or what I call click and brick. And the two parts that I'm talking about are curbside pickup and delivery, right? That's still pulling from the store shelf. The ship component, like Kroger Ship, I still put over with marketplaces like Amazon. But when COVID first hit, everybody went to Amazon, right? Then pretty quickly, the Amazon 2-day ship times turned to 30-day ship times. So people started flipping over to direct to consumer. Certain retailers better than others pivoted quickly as the Instacart started to come out and really started to drive that shopping experience for a consumer. Some retailers more than others were smart enough to say, hey, we got to pick this ball up, right? So Kroger was smart, even though they fulfilled through Instacart at the beginning, they used their loyalty program to actually drive the consumer and own that relationship and traffic. Now, when it was with CA Fortune on the agency side, when that started happening, I started talking to my sales folks, because if you look at brick and mortar, there's 5 advents of trade spend. And I know you could speak a soliloquy about that, but my general synopsis is 2 are bad and 3 are good, right? Slotting and free fills, bad. You're paying for error, giving away products. Demo, promo, and display can be good because you're actually driving velocity, right? If done smartly and you're using good folks like Promo Mash. So when, for example, Kroger started hitting this, I started talking with my sales folks and I'm like, hey, when you go into those category reviews, go to your buyer and say, instead of slotting or free fills, I'm already in the system in Kroger.com when I'm in distribution. Why don't I just put that money and allocate it over here? Where if you're using Promote IQ, et cetera, you can get somewhere between 4 to 8 times ROAS within that system. But even if you got a 1X, I would much rather spend $1 and get $1 back than pay for error giveaway product. Kroger actually dropped the first domino on that I think it's closer to five months or so ago. They actually said that waive slotting if you put 5% trade spend against Promote IQ and Kroger.com. Now, at the same time, if I am driving my ad spend across the top, now I can divvy it out, right? I can drive it to Shopify. I could drive it to Amazon where it makes sense. And I could support my retailer, especially if I'm not on promo, by driving that traffic to my click and brick and giving the consumer through Destiny or McMac or one of those tools to be able to have that toggle to where I'm not spending in 4 buckets, but I'm treating them all equally by saying, I don't care what channel my consumer wants to buy the product, as long as they can get it and as long as I can make my margins, right? So now going into performance marketing and direct to consumer. I'm sure you guys, a lot of folks have played with this. I'm just going to state off the top, I am not a massive fan of organic social, right? Organic social isn't what it used to be years ago, right? If you define organic social as non-paid social, right? So here's sort of my thesis. One, first and foremost, consideration. That's your Shopify vehicle. If you drive people into the funnel, you need to make sure they're in a bucket that doesn't leak and starts to drive people down towards the purchase component. If they're leaking, you need to figure out where those leaks are and how to plug them. Bottom of the funnel conversion happens a couple ways. I'll talk about one a little bit later, but email and SMS through Klaviyo is really your magic stick. If I spend $1 and get $1 back from somebody on ROAS, email and SMS, by getting somebody to buy more and buy more often, and you're not paying to reach that person, they become your consumer. That's how you can turn your one-time ROAS into 5-time ROAS. That's how you can increase your LTV or your long-term value, your ACV or your average customer value, or your AOV or average order value. Those are just taking the same folks you're working with and getting more out of them. Now when I go to the top of funnel, where once again, most people think top of funnel things, they're thinking TikTok and Meta, et cetera, and those have their place in time. But the very first place I typically start with somebody getting into the game is, let's go to the cheaper stuff that yields high return, right? So let's look at SEO. It's a long tail play, but it's the gift that keeps giving back, right? If you build that SEO functionality. Paid search and Google Shopping. is relatively cheap, very targeted audiences that are raising their hand and saying they know what they want. An affiliate. Affiliate to me is basically influencer that only gets paid if you sell a product and they get commission, right? So it takes all the good from influencer and gets rid of all the bad, paying for smoke and mirrors or air or clicks. I don't care about impressions. I care about conversions, right? Then after you get the funnel working and working properly, then you can start to invest heavier in Meta and TikTok with your creator strategies, where we've had some great results with like Tybini Baby is one of our clients, etc. We do massive things with those, but there's a time and a place and an order of operations, because when you're going on Meta and TikTok, some other things happen. Your out-of-pocket costs greatly increase and your risks increase, and your content creation, your video shoots and your photo shoots greatly increase on those avenues. So I'm not saying don't do it, but do it at the right time and make sure the funnel is converting. Now, I'm going to get into some geeky stuff in here that we have, but this is something you should be thinking about or looking at all time. The core goal is to know every KPI that drives the business, right? I typically think less about ROAS or return on ad spend, and I like to think more about 3-time LTV over CAC, all right, or long-term value over customer acquisition costs, right? I like to get those things to where if I don't, how can I get the people to buy more often? And it's not, and if I spend money and get a return, I want to know not only which channel is performing, but which post within each channel is performing. So I want to break it down to the blog post level on SEO. What is driving return for certain folks like our quick zip sheets? We might do 10 or 20K a month just on SEO that we built a long time ago on a couple of blog posts, right? Or if you add up the long tail and all those little blog posts adding together, it adds a lot for a little bit of spend. I want to know if I am doing paid search, what terms are actually driving not only the quick clicks, but more importantly, which ones are driving not only the purchase, but the better LTV along the way. Then I like to think about with Klaviyo and my email, I like to break all my audiences down into 9 cohorts, right? So if we look at this sort of cohort basis, and I break this down by 2 things that are important to me in this case, average order value and average customer value. If I start thinking about, hey, cohort 5 is 220, cohort 7 is 440, what is 7 buying that 5's not buying, right? How can I get a 5 to level up to a 6? And guess what? I just doubled my revenue with my average customer value with those folks without going to acquire a new customer, but getting my existing customer to buy more, right? This is an example for Pacha soap, where we dug through and found some interesting things. If somebody buys French lavender bar soap, they might buy Dirty Hippie, they might buy almond goat's milk, they might buy deodorant, right? So by running a bundle that has some of these components to the 5s, we can get them to level up to a 7, right? When I think about Amazon is not your average bear, right? Almost a lot of the same things I take for granted on DTC are the exact opposite really on Amazon. One, my product photo, my product shots might have white backgrounds because Amazon appreciates white backgrounds over colored backgrounds. I'm maximizing my bullet points sort of along the way. I want never leave a font behind, right? I want to maximize every inch that Amazon gives to me and make it work for me. I want to get my Amazon PPC down from 60% ACoS down to 20 and get that stuff working for me. So it's a lot more algorithmic based than DTC in a lot of components, a little bit more science than art in a lot of cases. So just in general, the way I like to think about it, once again, coming in, once I have a strong brand strategy, as I think about this component, the first thing I want to do is convert current demand, get that funnel, get that working properly before I spend the bigger money to create future demand with a heavier cost like out-of-pocket spend with Meta and TikTok and the content creation side. So almost the inverse of the way a lot of brands do it. I'll skip through sort of this part, but just putting it all together, there's sort of three chunks that I like to think about. So marketing is nice, branding is nice, but I like to think of everything through, and I'm throwing some partners in here that you guys might or might not know, especially the folks over on the right. But anytime you get marketing to work with sales and operations, that's the easy peasy part, right? That makes everything better. If you're working in silos, that doesn't happen. So your marketing team, your direct to consumer team, your sales agency or outsourced sales agency, and your operations, both plant side operations and back office and trade spend and deduction management, all have to be working in concert together. So it shouldn't be three people going off to three separate rooms. It should be the three folks getting together and figure out how to take over the world, right? Yep.
Asks, she says, data is king, queen, and other. How can we find an affordable entry point for IRA spins or others? So, you got any suggestions or hot tips on how to make that data, how to get at it more affordably?
Well, the most affordable way is to find something that falls off the back of a truck. But but no, seriously, there's most of those guys have snapshot plays to where you can get a snapshot in time. I argue for most emerging brands, etc., you shouldn't have to have an ongoing relationship with them day one, right? If you tend to, or you can leverage your partner with your distributor or broker that does have that data already, right? Um, but if you are going to buy your own data, I would recommend a snapshot. And I love I Nielsen and Spins for three completely different reasons. But I have seen Nielsen get a little bit more creative for emerging brands, right? Not saying that Spins and IRI might not be thinking about or doing that, but I just saw the first sort of bucket drop with
Yeah, I mean, the default seems to be, a 4-year contract, and blah, blah, blah. It's pretty expensive, but those sound like some pretty good suggestions for how to do something more reasonable, sort of as appropriate when you're at a smaller scale. So,
Hi Jane, by the way, I saw you on there. Well, and I love Chris. I love Chris and I love I Nielsen and Spitz for completely different reasons, right? When I'm going through a brand strategy and trying to find the white space and trying to figure out my differentiator, in a lot of cases, your own data is really meaningless, right? It's really about the competitive data, et cetera. So that's where I like I Nielsen and Spins from the syndicated side. Once it comes to I'm already in distribution and I want to find and track and measure my performance, less against other people, but more against my own benchmarks. How did I do the month before, year over year, et cetera. And some of the logistics like Chris was knowing where the hell is my product? Is it stuck in a DC or in a door? So the actionable date, once the product is actually in distribution, Chris to me is the Bible, right? On dumping all that distributor data and any retailer data that I have into something that's meaningful and actually has action attached to it. That's where I see the difference between the two. And it took me a long time to figure that out. But yeah. So if there's not any other questions, I can go through a couple case studies, see if that warrants, or if anybody has a, we could drive the conversation one of many ways. One, I love brand strategy. Two, I love DTC. Three, I love Amazon. Four, I love retail, and I've got some good retail partners and approaches from the sales agency side. Or four, raising capital, or what everybody's going through right now, which is working capital and investor. Debt's really expensive, and investors sitting on their wallet. So either I could just ramble on and keep going, or if somebody wants to.
for right now, given the environment, given the current focus that you think investors have, and what the capital environment looks like, what do you think that that brands are? Is there any change, shall we say, any zeitgeist based change in how things should be focused? Is there sort of a new weighting that people ought to be more focused on right now than might typically be?
Yeah, absolutely. 100% there is. Unfortunately, CPG for a little bit there was almost treated like tech, right? It was revenue and ACV over everything, above margins, above EBITDA, and all of those things. And I was actually I did a little fireside chat with Tappan from Mondelez, and he said one of the quotes that probably said it best was both the investors were spending and the investors were investing like drunken sailors. Those days are over. Like, so the days of the hockey stick, get my big capital raise on, a company that might be doing 5 million in revenue, but no EBITDA, and it's still burning at a big place. Those days of people writing the check on that big cum of doing, 4x multiples, they're over. 4x's last
So
year are going for 1.5 and 2x's this year if they're lucky, right? From the same investors, right?
right. So Yuval and I have this humorous sort of bickering conversation going on. Imagining, you're a brand, you're skiing down the hill, no poles, got guys shooting at you with guns, you're weaving in and out of trees, and someone says, "What is your focus?" And the argument between us is, so we got this acronym CPG. It actually stands for cash flow, profitability, and growth. And the argument is it cash flow first and then demonstrate profitability? Or is it, hey, you got to show a path to profitability. And by the way, you need cash, don't run out. And growth just seems to be the sort of whatever you can get after that.
Yeah, to me is once again the idea of fast growth, et cetera, which unfortunately a lot of people that built their company and investment on that old tech approach are now stuck with reality, right?
Exactly.
They're stuck with asset-based lending, they're stuck with PO financing, they're stuck like currency exchanges, paying today's money on yesterday's interest. Um, and now they're getting walloped by it, right? Interest
Right.
rates are through the roof. They're getting worse, so they're overpaying on that. So I would argue any brand growing up now that didn't have that baggage attached to them is start to think less about a hockey stick brand and taking over the world and more about building a solid business foundation based on everything should run through your margin calculator. And if that doesn't equal 30 points at the end of your margin calculator, you better have a damn good reason why not, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything you do has to be tied
So
to,
you need to be able to clearly demonstrate unit economic sense.
yeah,
And
there will be some burn with any company moving forward. There will be some burn, but the delta burn to profitability needs to be a lot less today than it was yesterday.
now, let's say you're a typical, super product focused founder. You've got a couple of million in revenue under your belt now, and you're kind of growing, and then you start to hit the wall. You hit some headwinds. The environment's gotten a little tougher, and smiling and cheerleading doesn't cut it anymore. And you really need somebody who has their financial chops about them, and that's not your wheelhouse. How do you recommend a really product focused founder who it's been possible in the past to just bring in some investors and make it happen? Now you really need some financial acumen in your organization. How do you recommend them to fill in that?
Yeah, I think every right brain needs a left brain. Every left brain needs a right brain, right?
Well put. Well put.
If you don't have that in your skill set, you need to beg, borrow, or steal it, right? I don't care if that means go hire somebody, if that means give equity or a partner to somebody, use an outsource group. There's some great ones. Like I used George from Rudder Services back in the day, and there's a bunch of them like that that could do outsource CFO, bookkeeping, and controller work, right?
Right.
But listen to them like they are your partner, even if they're not, or advisory roles from people that can actually bring that to the table. even if you can't afford it, there's ways to get it, but you might have to give something up. But you're going to have a much, even though you'll have a smaller piece of a much bigger pie that's worth something than a larger piece of a pie
A
that's
dead
that's
pie.
going to go flat, right?
Right. Well put.
I'm going through the questions here. I think, oh yeah, somebody mentioned startup CPG, which by the way, Daniel, that entire group, Pat, everybody, phenomenal. Visor, that's Nielsen IQ, right? Is that Visor or is that separate? Someone know? But yeah, startup CPG, if you haven't gone there, is a great resource too, especially if you're young and emerging in the CPG space. To once again find those other people that made mistakes so you don't have to. And a lot of those folks are really good at sharing. We put an event on in Chicago for years. I actually founded with Patrick Tanous from TS to T. I think some of the first folks sitting around the room were John Giacaris from Little Lady Foods. Caitlin showed up with, and Peter and Jared from our X Bar were sort of there back when they were wearing hairnets. And it was it was like AA for food brands, right? So it was everybody that is either going through it or went through it, and they all had the same problems, right? My co-packer sucks the least out of the three I tried. I'm paying X amount with a broker distributor. I have no clue what they're doing for me. Or, yay, I got the product on the shelf. How do I get it off the shelf, right? And there's so much smoke and mirrors from service providers and people out there intentionally or unintentionally say they have the magic solve. And unfortunately, a lot of people A/B test their way there with the wrong people and the wrong advice, and they end up getting burned, right? So talk to some folks that have been through that. And once again, going back to the two wrongs don't make a right, but three lefts do, some of those folks can help you not make those wrong turns.
So, got any suggestions for kind of group environments where you're likely to run into a diversity of people, situations, and experiences that are likely to be a rich environment for you?
Yeah, if you're ever in Chicago, let me know. And Windy City Troublemakers is what that one's all about. Yuval and I met back in when COVID hit. We were the 100 or so geeks on Clubhouse hanging out. And it was for all the people that really missed those after parties and hanging out and having dinners after Expo East and West and Fancy Food Summer and Winter. It became the place for us folks that missed that to hang out. What was ironic was Yuval was there, Daniel was Startup CPG, who Startup CPG became a great resource for that too. So it's kind of funny. A lot of that whole Clubhouse crew has went out and created newer, updated sort of networking cycles out of there. So, every area sort of is going to have their own, but nationally you've got nationally Chicago, nationally Bay Area, nationally Austin, nationally Boulder, nationally New York. They're a bunch of great folks in each of those organizations. I'm a Chicago member. Chicago, we have Chicagoland Food and Bev as well as naturally Chicago. We also have the Hatchery for earlier stage brands. But every location has somewhat of a different ecosystem. But nationally and online, naturally is a good one. Startup CPG is a great one as well.
Yeah.
Those are some great resources with people who have done that or still going through it.
Super.
Cool.
Well,
go ahead.
I see no other questions in specific. So if you want to share a quick exemplary case study, you're welcome to do that, or we can.
It just lets you know how to think. So yeah, let me share this again real quick. Yeah, I'll just share.
It'll always be useful.
Share one real quick. I think, anyways. Boom. Yeah, so I'll give you an example of a 4C process because it's easier. It's still hard, right? But it's easier said than done. Right? So there's a friend of mine who had a couple exits to Advanced Pierre. So think frozen chicken, right? He was on his last exit. He went to Asia, saw somebody eating a a chicken leg with Parmesan and marinara on it, came back and the light bulb went off. And he said, I'm going to make a frozen pizza, but instead of using dough, I'm going to use pre-cooked ground chicken and Parmesan, right? So two things happened from that. One, he had a pizza that actually microwaved really well, because I don't know if you've ever had soggy microwave dough, and microwaves just don't go hand in hand. But pre-cooked chicken and Parmesan really crisp really well. And the other thing is it had these great macros, 28 grams of protein and really low carbs, right? So we started looking at the data, right? Looking at the category and competition, not going by gut or what other people are telling me they want. And what we found at the time, there was two sets for frozen pizza. You had your premium set with Screaming Sicilian and Palermo's on a good week that would do 10 turns per SKU per week per store. Or you had the gluten-free glass with Amy's and Udi's on a good week would do 2 or 3 turns. I would much rather be a loser in the premium set than a winner in the gluten-free glass any day, right? And we talk about the consumer in the pizza aisle is almost the same as the consumer in the ice cream aisle. They go there to sin first, right? So consumer knows today, I would much rather have a teaspoon of Tillamook that's tasty and indulgent than a pint of Halo Top that, I'm sitting on the toilet for an hour. It's just not a good experience, right? Same thing with pizza. You have to be taste first, health second, right? So we had to come up with a brand that we could speak out of both sides of our mouth. I could talk to the keto crowd shopping at GNC and say one thing, and this is early in the keto days too, and I could talk to Bubba sitting on the couch and watching NASCAR and shopping at Walmart, who didn't care about keto per se, but cared about protein and low carbs. I could say something completely different to that consumer, right? So I had to have this dual lens. So what we crafted and created was real good foods, right? Real ingredients, good and good for you to the keto crowd, real good with a thumbs up for Bubba watching NASCAR. You're just average mass consumer, right? It was good for both, because if I just won in natural or keto set, I'm still going to be tiny. If I can get keto and Walmart, I could take over the world, right? So Real Good allowed us to do that. We started off with first going after the keto crowd on a marketing strategy. Brian went GNC and Vitamin Shop in a bunker program, bringing in the freezers. Amazon and direct to consumer got to about $1 million per month before he really went into retail. When he went into retail, he told the buyer the two things he wanted to hear at Kroger first. Hey, buyer, put this on the shelf next to Screaming Sicilian. I might not outturn the competition, but I'm going to outmargin the competition, and I'm going to bring this keto shopper back to the frozen glass that hadn't seen it in a while. So killed it at Kroger, and then Kroger said, hey, good job. What else do you got, right? So started looking at TDP, and started looking at this frozen entree set that was ripe for disruption. Started to look at bowls, started to look at handhelds, started to look at appetizers, even reduced the size of the pizza then to create a brand block in this frozen set. So killed it at Kroger, killed it at Target, killed it at Walmart. I think he IPO'd, he got to over 50 million in revenue and IPO'd. So, that's a compelling story. When I first met Brian, he sent me a brown paper bag prototype that scared me a little bit. I never heard of ground chicken and Parmesan and a thing. But by having a good approach, letting the data drive the decision, how to create dual lenses with your audience, and then having a channel strategy that can attack it, that's how you can perform as a brand and grow from here to there. Yeah, I mean, sampling is always a major play, right? The problem with sampling is scalability, right? So sampling is a great program, and that's why I like Uval and Promo. I don't like Uval. I like Promo Mash, not Uval. But is every retailer in every region that mix of trade spend between sliding and free fills bad, demo, promo, display good, but that demo, promo, display varies by store, by banner, by location.
By category.
Yeah, but you might find that sampling works in your A stores for this banner, but not the A stores for this banner. There's let the data drive the decision. Go in with a thesis and test against the thesis from your best practices.
Yeah.
But then let the data pivot you on what to do at what mix that does it. So yes, sampling is great or can be great,
Can be.
or it can be very costly and drain you.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, well put. Great example. Great example.
Hey, I got stories galore. You're telling them.
I'm sure you do. Rapid fire every time, I'm sure. Well, listen, Steve, thanks very much. Appreciate your service to the community and the wealth of knowledge that you have, and that you just came out here and offer it. I love the fact that you're just like, hey, however I can help, no pitch. So you guys, if you have questions, or if you might have a situation where you could benefit from, or you know somebody who could benefit from talking to Steve, he's not going to chase you. He hasn't even asked us for, who's on this webinar, and there's his address. Reach out to him, Steve at 108cpg.com. Steve, again, thank you so much for everything you do, and hope that you all have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you next time. Oh, go ahead.
One last thing, my 1995 buy now offer. Seriously, all seriousness, I know a lot of people smarter than me, and the bar is really low. Anytime somebody needs help, feel free to reach out to me. I play the karma bank really well. If you need help on figuring out marketing, sales, operations, or just connectivity, or running to a brick wall, my brain's always free. Consider me an advisor, not on the cap table.
And we'll vouch for that. The impression that you get after about 3 minutes with Steve is that he really doesn't need other stuff to do in a given day. He's got plenty of irons in the fire, but he's just all about helping. And so more than anybody you'll ever meet, reach out if you need something, and I'm sure he's going to knock himself out trying to help. So with that, again, Steve, thanks. You guys take care, and have a great rest of your day.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye now.